It was there, yes, there, where it could find what it was looking for. On a rock, orbiting binary stars ever in their dancing orbit. There, where life had been all but vanished millennia ago, and through unnatural genesis had been brought back as lush as before. There, where millions gathered in their towering vessels of population and production. There, where the ultimate resource could be found. Melina was awoken with a start at the sound of the cogitator alarm. It had been especially hard on her ears to be within the small confines of the Array's core for as long as she had, but nowhere else was safe to sleep at risk of the others disparaging her as part of the team operating at the Hive's pumping station 3. She pushed herself up to see what the damage had been wrought on the system and, more importantly, to turn the damnable thing off. Inspecting the blinking red light, she could see the words low pressure and knew that either a leak had been sprung, or one of the few gangs who dared come this low was trying to skim of the promethium and had taken more than they could hide. Regardless, it wasn't her issue. It was never her issue. Melina was never allowed down into the maintenance tunnels anymore, not since the Overseer in the red robes had told her otherwise. Melina crawled out of the space she slept in and began the arduous trip to the Overseer's office. The station was never fully manned as it should have been, but that never stopped the others, who alongside Melina only woke when either meager rations were delivered or, like now, when a problem arose. On her way, though, she spotted no one. She wasn't surprised when she was avoided, sure. Everyone tried to steer clear of Melina, though she couldn't fathom why. But this was different. There wasn't anyone swilling the cheap watered-down booze. Watered down, if that's what you could call what was added to it. There wasn't anyone shuffling and reshuffling cards to try for a reading of the tarots for their next shift, or to try and earn the rations off another unfortunate soul. Not even ones like her, with itchy splotches of skin on her arms and head that felt tougher and more gritty than the rest. Whatever the case, the door to the Overseer's office was just ahead. A hard shove, Melina forced the door open enough to raise her voice in a cracking but clear "Hello?" Speaking was never Melina's strong suit, on account of that when she tried to speak up, others flinched and covered their ears, or when she tried to talk normally, she was barely a whisper. Speaking wasn't her job either, and after a minute she peered in to find the office just as vacant as the rest of the station. No overturned papers, no rush. Melina bashed her shoulder into the door and forced it wide enough to step through into the quiet interior. The odd feeling she had came back stronger now. Uncertainty. Despite the disdain she accrued, she was valued by the Overseer for her innate understanding of the pipes and its tunnel network. Also, she was the only one small and svelte enough to fit into the space to read the cogitator outputs. Melina went to the desk and tried to search, but nothing stuck out. A lot of papers with numbers stacked to the right, with a messy pile addressing various overseers of her overseer and back covering the left. There was no note for her, for anyone. Melina was unnerved, but a small part of her, one that she liked to think lived in its own version of her little hovel, was frustrated. She had come all this way, risking the glares of her peers, just to find no one to tell about the one thing they let her do for her post. It was beyond frustrating. It was infuriating. Melina went back out the door and picked up one of the satchels used by the crew that ran the tunnel. She determined that regardless of what everyone else was doing, they would understand if she took matters into her own hands and fixed the issue while they were gone. Or at least, they wouldn't be as terribly upset with her. The tunnels of an Underhive can best be described as an incomprehensible maze, hallways built on hallways connecting as necessitates to remove whatever resource of value the Hive's governance saw fit to utilize before swiftly being forgotten. Only those born and having lived their whole lives underneath the behemoth cities were of a chance to navigate through. Such was Melina's own nature. The lack of lumens left the path dark, but when were there ever? Maintenance crews never came to replace them, so Melina, much like the others, had to simply let her eyes adjust and trust her born instinct. It also helped that she could hazard the way. Following the particular pipe pipe 4-E, made the trip that much smoother, as all she had to do was keep her hand to the tarnished and weathered surface. Hours into the trip, Melina was jolted back to attention by a sound, not just her own footfalls, or the condensation dripping off a coolant pipe passing by. A pair of steps coming from a branching tunnel ahead. Knowing it was best to err on the side of caution, Melina squirmed under the wall of piping leading the far side. Melina squirmed under the wall of piping lining the far side, tucking her bag in after her as the pair came into view. It took her a minute to understand what she was looking at. In the dark, the splotches on their uniforms made their outlines break against the constant pitch of their surroundings. And only after realizing why they were hard to look at did she realize what those splotches were. Blood. Staining blood covering swaths of their workers' uniforms. These must be part of that gang who meddled with the pipes, looking for rivals or hapless worker drones such as herself being sent to undo what they had done. Melina reached down for her bag and searched with her hand, trying to find something, anything that would help her should the two find. By the time she had, a rather heavy-set wrench meant to tighten the bolts on the leading pipes. The two turned down the way she had come and continued their prowling in silence. Where were they going? Melina could only wonder until it hit her. What if they had already struck the pumping station she worked at? What if she was the only one alive, because she had been safely tucked away in the cogitator ray until that alarm? Dread settled firmly in, but given the two's choice of direction, she couldn't risk turning back. And if it meant a last hurrah, she would undo their work and avenge her colleagues in her own way.